Hello everyone, it's Lennon. Today we're going to talk about the creep factor, okay? Now, I was originally inspired to make this video as a response to Sorsha Soaring Craft. I will leave their channel link below. They're a fairly new channel, but I've been binging their content. I love their content. And they had made a video, Sorsha had made a video about the word creepy and how they don't really adhere to what some people in the community would deem creepy. That when, I guess more now, people have been coming on and they've been saying, oh, here's my dark decks, here's my creepy decks, and how Sorsha they don't find that stuff creepy. And I was immediately like, okay, all right, me neither. So, I wanted to touch on this, but also, Sorsha had a couple of videos surrounding the dark, okay, the creep factor, aesthetics, and so I wanted to mesh all of those kind of together and kind of chat about those today. Another video that inspired me was James Feeney's most recent video about witchcraft aesthetic, and that, he touched on some good points in that video about like magic and aesthetics and things like that. And then I watched a video a long time ago, it was probably almost a year ago now. It was heartbreaking, you guys. It was a video by The Wayward Life, and I'll leave that video below, but it was about witchcraft aesthetics and how they felt betrayed by someone in the community that, this person, I don't know who it was, this person in the community dogged clean witchcraft, clean altar spaces, minimalist witchcraft aesthetic. They were dogging it kind of in a derogatory, negative way, and it was heartbreaking, you guys, to watch that video about someone in the community gaslighting, for lack of a better term, and that the whole point is in a community isn't to find only the people that think exactly like you, okay? We're not Hitler. Sorry. And it's about finding the differences and similarities and finding the beauty in all of that, which I think is the most important thing. I think that the most important maxim in my entire life has been know thyself. And that's an important thing that I have to battle with. It's an internal battle that everyone has. This battle that we have with what we idolize versus what we demonize, and what we're demonizing, how are we going about the demonization? This isn't the Crusades. This isn't the Inquisition. Do we want to just keep repeating history? It's like, how are you demonizing something? How are you idolizing something? Are you putting people and creators up on pedestals? Or when you want to demonize something, are you actually shouting people out in a bad, negative way, right? What are you doing in terms of personal aesthetics to make it seem like this is the right way to do things instead of this is my way of doing things, which I believe is important. However, I don't believe that there's anything wrong with what I'll consider purposeful aesthetic versus personal aesthetic, right? Like, say this stuff. This stuff sits here. Actually, I just put this here. The candelabra usually sits on my mantle, but it's personal aesthetic, right? But that doesn't mean that but like the fact that I put this candelabra here and this skull here, Tim, I'm calling him Tim, my dark skull here, I cultivated that for the purpose of this video. That's what I would call purposeful aesthetic. And a lot of people do that in terms of videos and in terms of content because that's their branding, I believe. I believe that when I go to certain channels or, certain content creators, certain photographers, certain Instagram, like the way someone's mapping out their Instagram, those are purposeful aesthetics because a lot of times that's going on your personal branding, what you would like your brand to look like in terms of getting money. Like, say, if YouTube was your job, or if sales through Instagram was your job, right? You'd have to have a personal aesthetic, purposeful aesthetic, along with your personal aesthetic to gain the following and to gain the money aspect of it, because it's a job. So I believe that both are important, but I believe that when we use those purposeful or personal aesthetics to attack groups, to attack peoples, to attack in a way that this is the right way to do things and this is the wrong way to do things, that's where it's wrong. Okay. So I guess I agree on a sense that, you know, aesthetics can lead to tough things. They can lead to consumerism, capitalism. They can lead to, let's just say someone comments and says, "Oh my goodness, I love your tree. Okay, this light up tree. Where did you get it?" And I tell them, right? Let's just say, you know, like, "Oh, I got it off blah, blah, blah." I personally today didn't put this tree, the tree's always in here, but I didn't put this tree here to tell people where it came from. I don't personally know who's going to be drawn to this item here, this actual item that they can go buy. Even if I, like, say this is one of my products for sale, that's different. But I also believe that whether or not it's either one of those, it's you that you have to watch. It's not someone else. And it's, if you're having problems with consumerism, or if you're having problems with, oh, you know, this was lovely, I need this, or this tool is going to really help me because it helped this person, and it's just an internal know thyself type of a relationship that you need to have with self, that I believe that's the key in terms of aesthetics. So another key aspect isn't on the consumerism path, it's more on the what I said before about idolization and demonization. If you know whether you're idolizing something or demonizing something, that's also avenues you can explore within yourself to get down to the core of yourself, to figure out why you didn't like something, why you were turned off by something, or why you clicked off really right away. You know, what emotion lied there that made you do those things, that made you click off, or, oh, no, that's wrong. You know, like, what was that core emotion that drove that? And I think that's a lot of times what we're talking about in terms of shadow work. We look at the underlying emotions we feel, those visceral reactions we have are from those emotions that when we encounter something. Same thing with idolization. I think both are important in terms of exploration. And I believe that everyone's journey with that is going to be different. And so when we start gaslighting or demonizing something in an active, public way, we have to watch ourselves, watch our relationships with those things. So those are some things I noticed in some of the aesthetic spheres. In James' video, it was so cool because he talked about mint green, right? And I remember, because I have mint in the garden. I had mint growing up in my childhood home. It was, because we lived in the deep south, it was one of those plants that's invasive as hell that you could actually get to grow in the red clay, is mint plants. And in front of our house, we had like this little bitty foot of a, I guess, garden bed that my mom wanted to, you know, she used to plant certain flowers throughout the year when she could get her hands on them. Usually they were friends from someone at her church. They would like give her a little bundle of something that she could plant. But anyways, I digress. So the one plant that stayed there most of my life, the time we lived there, was the mint plant. And I remember asking her when I had a, what is it, an Andes mint chocolate thing, candy? The inside, it was mint flavored, but it was the same color that James is wearing in that video. It was like a cooler green color. And I was like, but the plant is green. So why is mint green a lighter green, right? I remember asking this. And I think that that's so cool in terms of aesthetics, as well as how we use that. And the answer she gave was stuck with me so much, is the fact that it's a lighter green because it's cool, like mentholated. So when we think of mint, we think of the cool factor that it has in our mouths, right? This mentholated property that mint has right here for the throat. It's a cool, like a freezing, right? Like ice isn't ice blue. It's clear, like selenite, right? But we put that ice blue on there because of the factor of it being cool, right? In terms of hot versus cold, right? And thought that was so profound. I mean, it was just some random answer, like it was true, but it's always stuck with me how aesthetics are born from things like that. We put things that we shape our personal aesthetic and we shape our purposeful aesthetic in those terms because we want somebody to feel something like this, or we want someone to feel this way or this way or this way. And a lot of the times, like I said, with personal aesthetic, something that you do automatically, you don't even know you're doing it, And so I find those things fascinating about aesthetics. I also believe in Sorsha. I also believe in not limiting ourselves in terms of the relationship we have with different aesthetics. I don't want there to be a glass ceiling there. For instance, Sorsha mentioned neurodiversity. Okay, and this is such an important topic when we're talking about aesthetics and we're talking about how everyone's different, right? Whether you're a maximalist and you have things everywhere, or a minimalist and you like it to be very clean, very immaculate, very spotless, that could go into neurodivergency, and that could go into mental health issues that you have, and not even issues, it could just go into your mental health, that you have to have things a certain way. I have my oldest son is neurodivergent, and I have a few family members that had mental conditions, and one of my cousins actually had Down syndrome, right? And she had to have a specific fabric to sleep with. So when I see that fabric, I think of her, right? Not that was her personal aesthetic. I'm just saying that that's something that we have to think about, is that there are things that, in terms of mental health, that some people have to have. They have to have this kind of routine. They have to have this kind of setup. They have to have this a certain way. And I think that that's important to note as well, is that we're not always going to see the inner workings of those aesthetics. We're only seeing the surface stuff. And I think that that's so important to just think about. Just think about it. And also the fact that I've been battling, I haven't mentioned this on my channel before, but I've been battling with the fact that I've lost 2 of my 5 senses. Back in November of 2021, I got COVID. And it wasn't a hospitalized COVID. It was one of those bad flus that it felt like a bad flu. And I lost my sense of smell and my sense of taste. And we're now at the end of February 2022, and I still have not gotten them back. I have a skin condition in my ears that causes my hearing to be less. So that's been happening for over a decade. Is tinnitus, ringing in the ears, things like this. And the inflammation in terms of my skin condition that I have causes my hearing not to be 100%. So I already didn't have 100% hearing, and now I don't have sense of taste or smell. And I feel like that's been hell grappling with, because I lost those. It was a loss. But then it got me thinking of people that don't have those anyway. And I got to thinking about, like, there's people that go through life that are going through witchcraft, that are going through different spiritualities, that are using the tarot, that are using cards, and they may not have all their senses due to conditions, due to, whatever it could be. And those are also things that will generate their personal aesthetic as well, right? Like if they don't have sight, candles wouldn't be in their aesthetic. Because they can't see it, right? So I'm just, and plus it's dangerous for them in their lives. So what would that, we're not seeing the inner side of those aesthetics. And I think that it's important to just sit back when we're faced with an aesthetic that we encounter that goes into the negative, that we think is going into the negative aspect or the wrong aspect. more sit with this. Sit with this first before you know. I think that's the message. I did touch on in the beginning about the creep factor, that I wanted to talk about that. Now I've gone into the aesthetics a little bit, but I wanted to touch on the creep factor, okay? The fact that Sorsha talked about people using the term dark and using the term creepy, that's subjective to them. Like, yes, maybe a large percentage of people find these decks creepy, but it could just be that these people find it easy to put those words down, to put those adjectives down. They don't actually find that creepy, right? It's almost like if you've got a fear of spiders, then having a spider image actually makes you feel that creepiness, right? That the heebie-jeebies. And not a lot of things do that. For me, you know, there's emotions and visceral reactions that back up the creep factor. And it's so much easy to put the dark decks in these categories. But I think it's also important to note that those are subjective opinions about what creepy is. I believe that real creepy things, the ones that make me have those types of, I don't like the word negative in terms of emotions, in terms of psyche, but when we get drawn by those, the anguished emotions, the emotions of anguish and torment, that's really where the creep factor lies for me, is the real reality of life and what it could do. And not in terms of worst case scenarialism, which is like what horror movies are, like getting, you know, serial killer cutting you up with a saw, right? Stuff like that. That's escapism, a way for your brain to process what if those things happen. But a lot of people don't even think about it like that, which is what I would go into horror movies about. This is why I don't watch horror movies, is because I would probably be thinking, okay, what if this motherfucker were to come at me with a chainsaw? What am I supposed to do? And that would actually generate some feelings, but I don't need that. I have such a relationship with, well, I'll say my own mortality that I generated from a child that helps my brain process it already. I don't need a horror movie for that. But anyway, I got to thinking about not why people put the connotation of creepy onto certain decks and certain art and certain entertainment. It's more so that they lie in a box here. The term dark and the term creepy, all the things that could be those things are sitting in this box, while the things that are happy sit in this box. And I kind of meditated on the fact that it's the age-old dichotomy here of good versus evil, right? And the depictions we often see that we consider dark or that we consider creepy are usually, for me, depictions of actual nightmares, of actual paintings of death, like by famous artists that we know of that are the creepy artists, the nightmare artists, like Bosch. I know Sorsha mentioned Bosch. One of my favorite paintings is Kinski, and he's a Polish artist that paints these real nightmare-y scenes. I'll put a picture right here of one of my favorite images by him. And he doesn't title his art. There's no titles, because he says that when he's encountered these things through visions and through nightmares or whatever, it's a way that he expresses those things because he couldn't express them in words. So of course there would be no title. So they're not titled. None of his paintings are titled. But the visceral reaction that I have with those images are just that. They make me feel that creepy crawly, and it's that uncomfortableness that I am drawn to. But I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with that feeling of, you know, what's getting generated in my body, how my brain is processing that image, what's actually happening in that image in my mind. I think that we come at art with our own life experience, right? Everyone's life experience is different. We come at art with our life experience. So if I'm looking at a painting and someone else is looking at a painting, we're going to have different ideas of what this is saying to us. And there's beauty in that. There's beauty in the fact that I can sit next to someone and we can see something totally different in one painting. I think that's why art is so important. I love this quote by Francis Bacon, who is also what I consider a nightmare painter, nightmare artist. The job of the artist is to deepen the mystery. I love that quote because I believe that he inadvertently did that. He inadvertently made us realize that whatever you think is deep, it can always be deeper. You know, like it's the iceberg thing all over again that we talk about in shadow work. Like whatever you think is up here, you have absolutely no idea what's down here. You're not even looking. And that's why I'm always drawn to that type of art. When we look at like Bosch and his Garden of Earthly Delights, when you look at the triplicity of that big painting, you know, you're seeing heaven versus hell with this kind of earth, what I would consider, you've got some life experience right over here. That's, I guess, heaven to me is still is this dichotomy of naivete and innocence versus like torment, right? So it's happiness versus torment, and then somewhere in the middle you've meshed the two, and that's actual life, actual reality, and all that could be. So it's kind of like he's taken happiness and torment and meshed them together in a triple nature, which I think is beautiful. When we look at when I look at other depictions of hell, I'm seeing someone's idea of torment, right? And so when I think of this box of the creep, this box of the dark, this box of the macabre, I'm thinking of it in terms of not good and evil, but happiness versus torment. And that's the age-old thing. Now it's so easy to put good and evil on those instead of happiness and torment. And torment for me is the absence of hope, not necessarily the absence of happiness. Torment is this emotion that some humans may never face, but it's the absence of hope. That happiness is hope. That when we think of the naive and the innocent, there's hope there. There is real hope there for the future, for tomorrow. But then torment, there's no hope. What does this look like? And we're drawn to this. I think a lot of humans are drawn to this because of what I've figured out is morbid fascination. I read this fantastic article that led me to a YouTube video which used an acronym for why humans are drawn to the macabre, morbidity, and it was SCREAM. So it allows us, I wrote it down, it allows us, when we're fascinated by the dark box, it's because it gives us some version of strength, whether it's finding our own inner strength or giving us a, not a false strength, but a curated strength. Like we're finding our strength through someone else's strength, like say a hero, catharsis. So it's a way, like I said with the horror movies, it's a way for all the bad, tough times that we go through in our own human psyche and body and mind. It's a way for us to shed that because that person has it so much worse than we do. It's a way for us to bleed it out in a way, bleed out the what we have, the bad that we've gone through. I think that's something powerful that we do. Now, everyone's catharsis will look different. Some people's, like, say I look at I'm looking at a specific image, let's just say, and it does draw the tough out of me because this particular image did that, but it might not do it for someone else who's had tougher life experience than me, or who has had less, right? And everyone's different. There's beauty in that. One thing that I've cultivated a relationship with over the course of my life is death positivity. I think that it could kind of go into the same realm. But anyway, the R is for reality. It's a way for us to escape our reality, our own reality. So it's just a way for us to, you know, to put the horse blinders on to what our reality is, or for us to see all the possibilities, worst case and best case scenarios of life in art, entertainment, and things like that. And usually the dark box is how we can get there. But I don't think that morbid, and I thought about this too, that morbid fascination, when we think about this SCREAM acronym, and I will finish it, I promise, doesn't always go into the dark box. If you think of the movie Marley and Me, it's such a light movie. Light as in the opposite of this dark box over here, okay? Just to put the terms down. But we kind of go into this light box, not the dark box. But we're drawn to it for the emotions, the catharsis that we have with that. So it doesn't always have to be the dark aesthetic that we're drawn to that in terms of morbidity. I think that's also fascinating too, is that we can find that in the light box, the ones that check the light box, you know? So I think that for us to put things in boxes is like putting labels on things, you know? It's only good for conversations, but nothing else. So, the E is for exploration. I think it's a way for us to explore different human paths. That's it. I think that there's such an importance in exploration because humans are seekers. So I think that when we are drawn to something, or when we're not drawn to something, so idolization and demonization, it all goes down to where we want our path to go. Which path are we walking? What does it look like? What do we not want it to look like? And it's knowing those things that allows us to go on the journey. So important. They use "and" for the A in SCREAM. That drives me nuts because that's not a true acronym. Oh, that drives me insane. So strength, catharsis, reality, exploration, and for the A. And then the M is meaning. A lot of people, when they encounter things that would be in the dark box, in the creep box, in the dark box, the tough box, whatever you want to call it, there's always a level in humanity that needs to find meaning in why certain things happen to us, good or bad. Think that even in the good, we could go into the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome. You know, we don't think we deserve the good, right? So it happens in both boxes, but there's still this age-old dichotomy of both happening. And I think that it's the balance that's going to keep us. So I think, again, it's just important to know thyself in terms of the balance, in terms of balancing what we're going through, what we're shedding, you know? So I love this quote about death. You know, life asks death, why do people like me and hate you? And death replies, you are a beautiful lie and I am a painful truth. But I think that when we hold the balance of life and death, good and evil, light and dark, creepy and happy, I guess would be the other adjective there, or happy and torment, there's still a dichotomy. It's still the dichotomy that we have to keep the scales in balance with. Now, one thing that Sorsha pointed out was the fact that a lot of times when we encounter certain aesthetics, certain art, certain things in terms of entertainment for ourselves, we are looking at someone's personal gnosis. And my mind was blown with that. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Because I believe this too. I believe that we inadvertently we see this person's, a little bit of this person's aesthetic, this little person's happiness and torment. We're seeing this person, whether they're in balance or out of balance. We're seeing that in the art. We're seeing that in the movie. We're seeing that in this painting, in this poem, right? And I think that it's so beautiful to think of it in terms of we are seeing such a small, essential piece of someone. And it's that we're, in my opinion, that's that little bitty essence of people that we're drawn to when we encounter things that we're drawn to. But the idea that even as children, we encounter certain images through children's books. We encounter posters, right, throughout in the schools. We encounter things in the community, right? Even overhearing someone's conversations on a normal level, it does something to us that molds and shapes who and what we are and will become. And the Gnosis sits at the core of all that. Our Gnosis sits at the core of all that. And I believe that Gnosis is the seeking, right? It's when we're seeking and we're on a journey of seeking, we're trying to find answers. It's the little nuggets of things that we find. They all go into the hobo bag that is our Gnosis, personally. And I think that all of them are different. So when we look at aesthetics and we look at certain images and paintings and movies and entertainment of all levels, we're seeing that little piece of all the things that they found so far on that individual's journey. I'm going to give you some examples of my art now. And the fact that each of these three paintings that I'm going to show you look totally different. But they spoke to things that I found in those times of my life, and how each of them are so different. A couple of years ago, actually, I'll start with the oldest one and I'll work my way up. When I was a teenager, I think I was about 15 or 16, I painted this picture of sacred geometry, okay? And for some reason, even to this day, I have absolutely no idea why I painted this. No clue. But it's hung up in every single one of my houses. It's hung up in my bedroom when I was a kid, or, when I was a teenager. It hung up in my bedroom when I lived at home with the parents. And it's been hanging up in every house I've lived in so far. Every time I look at it, I feel something, but I don't really know what it is. And I think that it's that's getting expressed, right? We may not know what the nugget is, but it's there. And however we can express that, that's beautiful. So I'm going to show you. So it's not centered, but this is like sacred geometry. This is like the flower of life, I guess you could say. These are eyeballs, all kinds of eyeballs. But I wanted this ombre, this burnt umber, cadmium blood color, not ombre. I wanted this burnt umber mixed with almost like a cadmium color to represent like blood. I wanted it to be blood, but then for some reason I put these rays like it was the sun, but it's supposed to be blood. But then I've got this yellow background and I've put some gold in it, like I painted some of the edges gold, and then I painted all the eyes blue. No idea why I did it like this. And I'm not even really happy with the composition, because it's not even, right? But it was something that was inside my Gnosis that, I don't know, there's a reason I did it. So weird. But I love looking at it. Don't know what it is, but I love looking at it. So there's a nugget. And then a few years ago, I wrote a poem called The Hag's Residence, which was about like this vision. I have a lot of vision. I go on a lot of vision quests, which is what I call them, instead of trance. And inside one of them, I visited the crone, and it was in the forest, and it was dark and creepy. And the poem wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And if you want I'll leave the post that my poem below, because I shared that on Instagram. But the poem didn't seem to be enough. And something kept telling me, okay, you need to express this in another way. And so I finally got the paints out and I painted it, and it was so weird and abstract-y that I almost channeled it. I have no idea why it looks this way, but it does. I've got this like one lone branch here, the moon. You know, the moon is in this dark sky, but everything else looks kind of foresty and foggy, but abstract at the same time. There's like this dark vignette, almost like we're looking up, right? And it's like the edges of your vision. But then there's creature eyes, almost like what my husband would say is like the scene in Snow White where, you know, she's in the forest and all those eyes pop out. But, you know, I put eyes everywhere. And I thought, well, it wasn't creepy visiting the hag. It wasn't. To me, it didn't fill me with fear, I'll say. It didn't fill me with fear. And it didn't fill me with icky vibes. And I didn't encounter these animals in the dark. I didn't encounter them. So why did they show up in the painting? To this day, I don't know. This was something in my Gnosis that popped out when painting this that I have no idea what it is. So that's an example. Another example. And then the last painting I'll show is one that I did recently. And it's been hanging up in my bedroom, right? It's just a landscape, right? And these are like 3D, like they're squares, okay? 3D squares. Not cylinders, but like almost like obelisks. But they all look like they're part of one mountain, right? And one night, my husband and me were sitting in the bed, and he happened to look over, and he was like, "What is that?" Like, basically, what was the reference? Like, what is this supposed to be? And I told him straight up. I said, I have absolutely no idea. I got my paints out. I wanted to do something, and I have no idea what this is. And he said the most profound thing to me. He said, do you know what the other ones are? Like the hag's residence like lives right next to this on the wall in my bedroom. And I have a few others in there. And he's like, well, you know what all the rest of them are? And I said, yeah. He said, well, then that tells me that what this is supposed to be lives in there. It lives in there. Whatever this is, it lives in there, and you haven't gone there yet. You haven't tried to figure out what this is by basically path working. He doesn't even know what that is, but he was basically trying to tell me that I painted this to path work it, and that I'll finally figure out what it is if I were to go in there into the mouth of the mountain. How cool is that? I just thought that was so profound. Like, I mean, my husband's got some weird abilities, so. Anyway, so those are little nuggets of my Gnosis, and a lot of the times I don't even know what I'm doing. So I think keeping that in mind in terms of art and entertainment is important too. All right, now I'm going to show you a few decks. I don't have I guess, what people have, connotated as dark, creepy decks. I don't have any of those that people normally list, I'll say. But the ones that do actually pull out visceral reactions in me aren't necessarily the dark aesthetics. Okay, the most important shadow, getting to the core, right? The core of me is my soul cards. This is my most important deck in terms of exploration. Actually, in terms of the SCREAM acronym, this deck does all of them for me. Strengthens me. It allows me to suck shit out through catharsis, through crying and things like that. It allows me to get in touch with my own reality or escape it. And it allows me to explore certain aspects of myself in ways that I never could with any other deck. And it gives me meaning. I can find meaning in certain images, in terms of archetypes, in terms of what the base symbolism and archetypes are. That's where I find the core meaning. And I link that to myself. So this is actually Soul Cards 1, which has been the deck for this type of work for me since I started my tarot practice. I have been working with soul cards too. Excuse me. But it bothers me that there's 2 different decks. So I just cannot mentally do it. I can't mentally put them together as one big deck. It just would bother the shit out of me. But I have been working more in the last couple of years with soul cards too, as a way to get in touch with this. I mean, like, look, the snake is a powerful symbol. Go back to the Knights Templar. Go back to Tiamat. Go back to where all cultures have snake symbolism. And it's like ingrained into almost every culture. I think that's a powerful image, right? Music. Look at this. So these 2 decks have been probably the decks for the dark aesthetic, I guess you could say, for me. But then, yeah, I've got a few. But then when you look at decks like that people won't put dark on, but they'll say one specific card is creepy, like this from the Wild Unknown. But it's like, then what is your relationship to animal death? Maybe you grew up on a farm and you had to see slaughter in a way that this doesn't fill you with the death, transformation aspect of what the death card in tarot is supposed to tell you, but it fills you with farm images of chickens getting slaughtered and shit like that. So I think that those are also, that just knowing that what we deem creepy or dark is subjective, and that everyone's opinion is valid and everyone's opinion is gonna be different, and that there's a beauty that lies in all of that. I thought that there was one more creepy image from the Wild Unknown that I was going to share. And I think it was of that, the animal that was like, oh yeah, here it is. The bull that got struck. It's like the 10 of Swords, right? Maybe you live in the Midwest. Maybe you have actually seen a bull getting taken down. Like, I don't know. But everyone's life experiences shapes why they think this is creepy. I don't find this creepy. But some might. So, I guess it's just about knowing, like I said before, knowing yourself. And then the last deck I have is, oh, we've been on for so long. I'm so sorry. I like to talk. It's probably my best working shadow deck. It just takes me there, okay? Has no pictures. No scenic, I guess. No scenic pictures. And it's called the Dark Edition. It's by the Truth deck creators. There's these raw shock like images here. They look like sigils to me, and probably could be curated to form sigils around certain things. But the words are negative words, the negative box words, and they do generate some visceral reactions in me. But it's that uncomfortability that I look for growth. Dramatic, egotistical, stubborn, procrastination, inconsiderate, critical, defensive, ooh, morbid, no, see, I'm reading it backwards, I can't read backwards, worried, draining, indecisive, ooh, that's a big one for me, lonely, conniving, imbalanced, abusive, ruthless, right? So those are just some examples of some of the words that are used in this deck, and it's such a powerful deck because, you know, people often talk about the decks that kick their ass. They talk about aesthetics that kick their ass. They talk about movies that kick their ass or inspired them in ways that they didn't expect. a deck like this is going to work wonders for someone like me. But it's like, because, you know, the important thing about this deck to me is that it doesn't have scenes. Is that if someone were to... How would you draw timid? In a real way. Right? In real. How would you draw insincere? In a real way. Real reality way. Depressed. Everyone's depression looks different. So how would you draw that? You couldn't. Critical. Someone being critical of someone else, right? And it's the way in which I feel I can cultivate relationships with these words because they bring out these specific emotions. And those are some of my decks that pull out those specific harsh emotions out of me. And they don't make anyone's dark list, you know? So I just think that know yourself, know your feelings before you react. I think that there's another lesson in that is reacting versus responding and things like that. You know, getting the facts and things. And also to know just on the surface that you are only seeing the surface. That you're not seeing the inner workings of things. So all of these are so important. I don't even feel like I got it all out. Even with a 50-minute video. So anyway, go check the links in the resource section of this video. Sorsha Soaring Craft's channel. I've been binging their channel, their content. I love it. James's, and I'll leave the Wayward Life's video of the witchy aesthetic below as well. And let me know your thoughts below. Much love, people.